Welcome to Issues and Insights. I'm George Pennington, your occasional host here. And today, all the way from Saskatchewan, came down. That's a long bike trip. Professor Murray Warner, right? And you're the planning official,
yes.
Director in Radcliffe.
Yes.
And if you would, last time we chatted, I'll let you tell me a little bit about your background. So if you don't mind, go ahead and give us a little bit of your background, how you got here, and then let's get into what's rock and rolling in Radcliffe, okay?
So I probably am the only person in Radcliffe from Saskatchewan, Canada.
Oh, I bet there are hundreds, Murray. It's got to be hundreds.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting how I ended up in Radcliffe. But yeah, I'm originally from Canada, and I went to the University of Manitoba out of high school, and then I also went to the University of Windsor. That's where I graduated from, in Windsor, Ontario.
Okay.
Worked in Florida for a little while and came up to Radcliffe. I worked as a transportation planner in Southwest Florida in Fort Myers.
That's right. Okay.
And then came to Radcliffe because I wanted the opportunity to work in land use planning.
Okay.
It was kind of more tailored to my background, my educational background.
Gotcha. University of Manitoba.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
All the way up in Winnipeg.
In Winnipeg, yes. All right, well, good. And what's your undergrad degree in?
I have a undergraduate degree in planning.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Is it municipal planning, state planning, or did they differentiate?
It's urban planning.
Urban planning.
Yeah.
Good. And you've been here, what'd you say, how long have you been?
I've been here since 2000 with the city of Radcliffe.
Golly, 21. You're darn near indigenous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm almost becoming local.
Yeah, you're indigenous. Yes, you are now. Yes. Okay. Well, appreciate it. It's good to catch up. We chatted a year ago, but I don't know. It's like I never saw him before. But yeah. Well, good. If you would give us a rundown on what's going on in Radcliffe and what kind of things you're into right now.
Okay. So as you know, we just entered 2022, brand new year, and at the end of every year we compile an annual report. So we go back and look at all our construction numbers for the year within the planning and building department. So we assess building permits through our annual report and just look at all the construction activities that occurred throughout the previous year. So in 2021, we compiled our annual report for that year. And we found that we had a little over 10 million in total construction activity in Radcliffe. So our building permit records yielded that value.
How was that compared to the year before?
The year before it was about 12 million.
12, okay.
So really close to what we had the year before.
All right, yeah.
So we're staying steady.
Now, was 19 a bigger year even?
I think we've stayed pretty level
steady?
for the last few years.
Gotcha.
So
that's not that bad of a drop off then, is it?
No, actually, you're going to have ebbs and flows.
Sure.
This year could very easily surpass last year, could surpass 2020 as well. Okay. So it's hard to say really with construction trends, but the whole COVID pandemic definitely can change I guess basically investment in the community because things kind of changed for a while there with building material prices.
Yes.
And there was a bit of a slow drop off in construction just because of that. Costs were rising.
Sure.
But then things kind of rebounded because the material costs came back down again in a pretty short time frame.
Canada allowed them to ship wood back down, huh?
That's right.
Well, thank goodness.
Started cutting lumber again and shipping it.
There you go.
But basically, when those prices came back down, the demand was so high, there was a pent-up demand for housing.
Okay.
So as a result, we processed pretty close to about 100 permits last year.
Good gracious.
And we had 30 for housing units, 30 new housing units. So, and I look for that number to be equal this year, if not higher.
Gosh.
The demand is huge for housing right now.
Still.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Of our values, of that 10 million, almost half of it was for single family housing.
Gotcha.
So
the dollar amount in applications went up. Did the actual number go up too?
Well,
And just sheer numbers of
our
applications?
single-family housing went up. Now, the number of actual
Commercial?
permits was a little bit less than the previous year.
Gotcha.
But it was quite close to being on par.
Okay, good.
I would say that we've been almost very steady,
Okay.
consistent, really. So in terms of construction that we had specifically, single-family housing was, like I said, our biggest value out of the $10 million. We also had quite a bit in terms of non-residential additions, alterations, and remodels.
Okay, sure.
Some of the big ones that we had were our Walmart Neighborhood Market had a big remodel.
Okay.
It was about $1 million.
How long has that been there?
That's been there a little over 5 years now.
Okay, gotcha.
Walmart, from what I've been told, they actually do a full remodel every 5 years on their stores.
Okay, good.
No matter how old they are.
Gotcha.
So that store, most people go in and they're like, well, this is brand new.
Yeah.
Well, they completely remodeled it entirely.
Wow.
Usually it's internal, it's external. They even change parking striping, signage on the outside of the building.
Good gracious.
Sometimes they'll get into landscaping.
Uh-huh.
Usually like all the sign panels on the external of the building are completely updated.
Okay.
A lot of times those things weather,
Right,
so it just makes them look a lot clearer. They put new bulbs, things like that, and with new LED bulbs, it really makes a big difference. In 5 years' time, you'd be surprised how big a change that can be.
Yeah.
So, for example, they keep up with it quite often. We also had other remodels, Taylor Communications.
Okay.
They had a pretty sizable remodel that they were doing as well.
Gotcha.
We had a remodel of Wendy's, Verizon, Lincoln Trail Health did a remodel, Family Allergy and Asthma. So we had quite a few different remodels that went on. As well, we had a new service station that was built in town. We had a Jiffy Lube permit issued for a new Jiffy Lube center.
Okay.
And close to the intersection of Dixie and Lincoln Trail.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's currently under construction. So the permit was issued in 2021. Drove by it this morning, in fact, just to kind of take a look, and they're making a lot of progress. So we had a service station built.
Okay.
Another interesting thing that we issued a permit on was the Phillips wedding venue. So right off of 361 Patriot Parkway, if you're heading south from Joe Prather 361 intersection, it'd be on your left.
Sure. Okay.
About a mile down the road, close to the entrance of Cali Crossing subdivision. They're building a huge wedding hall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's big. It's really, really a large structure. Is almost $1 million structure.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it'd be a nice venue to have events like weddings and that kind
There's
of
a lot of demand for that kind of thing.
There is.
I mean, seems like it.
Yeah.
E-Town seems like it has some. Bowling Green has several, and I think they kill.
Yeah.
I think they do.
Yeah,
They do
it's
well.
really a big demand for that type of thing.
Did I see in the paper the other day there's rumors of coffee beans floating around? Nothing official is what I hear,
I think
right?
there was there's
some rumors?
Things put out in the newspaper
That-
about possible
That the aroma of coffee beans
Yeah.
might be somewhere in the area, huh?
some coffee shops potentially,
Yeah.
that could be built in the city. So
I got you.
yeah, I think there's been some information in the paper that's
I
been put
saw
out.
something in the paper the other day.
So yeah, we're processing new permits pretty consistently here, and have a lot of new business coming into town. So
It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
it's really interesting because we get to work with these businesses, and what a lot of people don't realize is these things take quite a bit of time to get the plans prepared by professional engineers, surveyors. They're submitted to us for review. We do multiple reviews, and then the approval process, and then you get to issuing a building permit, and then actual construction taking place. So
that can be a year or so?
It could be years in some cases.
Gotcha.
Where they look at acquiring the land.
Right.
They might be working with us in terms of land acquisition.
Yes.
Asking about zoning.
And then zoning
potentially
issues.
rezoning property, subdividing. They'll do development plans, like a site plan. So, and then a building permit. They'll have architectural plans associated with it. So
it's a process.
Yeah.
Or a process, as your hometown buddies might say. Process.
That's right.
Did you grow up saying process or process?
You know what? I still have family members that say process.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Just a little bit of different vernacular up there. But yeah, so the process is
like
quite
Boundary Oak.
extensive.
Like Boundary Oak, what kind of timeline was that, for example? Was that a several-year project to get it going, or being the facility's already there, was that kind of fast?
That was a lot more fluid in
Okay.
terms of it was more of a remodel situation. So there was not subdivision involved.
Right.
It was not construction from the ground up. Those projects obviously take a lot longer.
Sure.
If you get into rezoning, that definitely takes longer.
Right.
It just really depends on the extent of the scope of the work.
Sure.
And honestly, the property itself, what are the characteristics of the property?
Gotcha.
What's the zoning? Are there any land use characteristics where maybe there's certain design aspects where they have to subdivide a property before they can submit plans to develop the site? So,
and stormwater management, a big part of that too, a little bit?
That's also part of the development plan. Our engineering department handles that. So it's pretty interesting, and it's a long process.
Yeah.
So we're involved throughout the whole, the beginning to the end.
Good thing you're an organized sort, huh? Isn't it? It is a good thing.
It is.
Anybody that swims early in the morning is an organized
That's
person.
right.
I'll say that.
You have to have your alarm clock set.
Yes, you do.
Okay, so in terms of the annual report, that was really the extent that I wanted to kind of go over and talk about that. I also wanted to talk about some of our permits that we issue.
Let's do it.
And go over that, because it's a time of year where people are, believe it or not, this is a time of year where plans are coming in quite steadily and frequently. The reason
for
why,
summer events, spring and summer events?
Exactly. They're trying to get all their approvals and their documents ready so that they're ready to go come spring. And they can break ground on these projects, spring through summer into fall.
Gotcha.
So believe it or not, this is a very busy time for us to be issuing permits.
Wow.
I guess in terms of permits that we do issue through our department, I was going to kind of go over some of the permits.
Yes, please do.
Okay. So permits that we would issue would include things such as building permits, obviously.
Go tops.
Yeah, there you go, hilltoppers. Building permits, and those are required for new buildings, additions, alterations, remodels, decks. In some cases, permits are not required for alterations or remodels where they're cosmetic. If they're structural, like adding or removing walls, then typically you're looking at a building permit being required. As well, for accessory structures, that would include things like sheds, carports, garages, where the structure is accessory to a principal structure like a home. For accessory structures of 200 plus square feet, you do need a building permit.
All right, gotcha.
So I kind of wanted to go over that so that people would have a basic understanding
because
and when in doubt, call to ask if you need a permit. Because
so if I want to build a shed, does it need to be 200 square feet to get a permit, or I still need a permit?
Well, if it's less than 200 square feet, you wouldn't need a permit.
Gotcha.
But it's always good to ask, because there are still regulations that apply if you do install a shed and it doesn't require a permit.
Gotcha.
For example, if someone was to call me and it was under that threshold, I would still go over a lot of regulations with them. For one, I'd say, are you going to dig any kind of a footer for it? Then I'd say, call Kentucky before you dig, bud.
Gotcha.
Which is for Kentucky 811,
Okay.
the one call center.
Yes.
So I'd say call, make sure your utilities are marked.
And they're pretty responsive on that, aren't they?
Very much
I
so.
mean, you'll get it within the day.
24 hours,
yeah.
Then I would also go over building setbacks.
Okay.
You know, it has to be, well, for example, accessory structures can't be in a front yard setback or side yard.
Okay.
So if someone says, hey, I want to put a shed in front of my house, I would say, well, you know, the location needs to be different.
Sure.
Even if it doesn't require a building permit, I'd want to talk to them about that to make sure we get the position and location in the right place.
Gotcha.
I'd also look at things like attributes of the property, make sure they're not putting it in some type of a restricted area like a floodplain with development restrictions or something.
Sure. Okay.
So even if permit's not required, like a building permit, I'd still want to go over a lot of information just to help people out.
Gotcha.
And I think what people sometimes don't realize is the permits themselves are not that costly, building permits. If it's under $3,999, $3,999 or less, there's no cost.
Okay.
And it goes up in $25 increments per $5,000 up to $90,000.
Okay.
So the permit cost is not that high, but we can't actually do inspections with our building inspector legally unless a permit's pulled.
I got you.
So if a permit's not issued, we can't go out and inspect it. And the whole inspection process is actually to help people and save them a lot of trouble. For example, if you're a building and maybe you didn't know you needed a permit and you started working on your house.
Yeah. What happens?
Say you hired contractors. You have maybe some framing done. You have electrical run, the electrical permit. If you didn't know, you had to get that too. And then maybe you put up drywall. Well, if a permit was, you know, if it was caught that, hey, you needed a permit, our inspector noticed there was construction, but they started without, well, it's very hard for him to inspect framing when drywall's up, and it's very hard to inspect the electrical when drywall's up.
Yes, it is.
So that's something we tell people is when the work is completed or partially completed, if it's done without a permit, it's more of a hindrance to the property owner because essentially our inspectors are going out to try to assist and make sure that the construction's within the scope of the Kentucky Building Code.
Okay, gotcha.
Other permits that we have within our department are fence permits for new fences or replacement of existing fences. Driveway permits, which is for new driveways, replacement of an existing driveway, or an enlargement of an existing driveway. Encroachment permits are another permit, and that could be any type of work done in the public right-of-way.
Okay.
So along the pavement edge of a city road, here recently we had a huge fiber optic project that was done through Comcast, and we had so many encroachment permits we issued for different areas that they were installing fiber optic all through town.
Gotcha.
But essentially it provided a tracking mechanism for us.
Okay.
And they provided maps of where all these utility lines were being installed with the permits.
Gotcha.
So it gave us an idea and prepared us for any kind of potential conflicts within our right-of-way.
How did that go with Comcast getting that? Did it go okay?
It went really well.
Okay, good.
Went smoothly. They did have to make a few sidewalk cuts here and there because a lot of our sidewalks fall within right-of-ways.
Gotcha.
They came back, repaired them. Any kind of digging or trenching that was done, they came back and repaired everything.
Okay, well, awesome.
So
Well, good.
You wouldn't even know that it was there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Also, another type of permit is sign permits. So if someone's putting up a new sign or replacing a sign, we have a permit for that. Tent permits, the installation of a tent. A lot of times those are associated with seasonal sales, like fireworks sales.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
You probably see a few weeks before 4th of July.
See a couple of those around, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they put up tents a lot of times for those seasonal sales.
Okay.
We have home occupation permits, and that is for people who want to operate a home-based business.
Okay, gotcha.
And what those might be are like small home offices, salons, and other kind of service-based businesses.
Even if it's dual purpose, even if it's their living quarters and then they have an office there, though? Okay. There.
They're only allowed to use a certain amount of square footage of the structure for the business.
Gotcha.
There's very specific regulations.
Gotcha.
Also, they have to live there, so they can't just turn a home into a commercial business. Mm-hmm. And the home business has to be secondary to the living quarters.
Okay, gotcha.
The person who's operating it has to reside at that property.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And we saw quite a bit of that, a trend toward home-based businesses for people wanting to, during the pandemic especially, they were trying to reduce overhead. So in some cases, they might move out of commercial locations and operate for smaller businesses out of the home.
Gotcha.
So it really helped a lot of people, I think, through that period.
Yeah.
Other things that we issue, not through our department specifically, but at City Hall, and we're involved with signing off on them, are business licenses.
Okay.
And that's for new businesses in Radcliffe, and also for people doing work outside the city. They may not have a business located in the city, but if they're doing work in the city, they need a business license.
Is that a fairly fluid process, or?
For the most part. Sometimes people from outside the city don't realize they need a business license to do work in the city. And there'll be times where we might see somebody and say, hey, you need a license if you're working in the city. You know, we might have an installer, someone that does maybe like accessory structures, like sheds or carports.
Sure.
Our building inspector might be driving by, see the person working, putting in a shed or a carport, and you know, they might be from Dublin, Ohio, or somewhere Indianapolis, Indiana, or something,
or Winnipeg.
Yeah, exactly.
Winnipeg,
They could be from all the way to Canada. We haven't run into that yet, but it is possible.
So, is that an expensive kind of proposition?
They're basically $25 for the permit.
Okay.
And then at the end of the year, there's fees associated. There's a formula based off gross receipts.
Gotcha.
So depending on how much business that company does in the city, that would determine, you know, what their fee is annually. Gotcha. But to get the permit itself, it's very inexpensive. And essentially, it's mainly to cover administrative costs of the city basically setting up the permit for them.
Gotcha. Do you have to do a background check or anything on?
No.
Okay.
We don't go that extensive with those.
Gotcha.
It's more based just on the business operations itself.
Okay, gotcha.
In terms of why we need the permits, I wanted to kind of talk about that a bit.
Absolutely.
So for building permits, the biggest thing is compliance with the Kentucky Building Code. And it gives our inspectors the chance to go out and legally inspect. If there's no building permit and someone calls and says, hey, you know, can you come out and look at my house and inspect? Can't do it legally.
Gotcha.
We have to have a permit to send someone out there.
Gotcha.
So it's really important to get those. Fence permits, we want compliance with the zoning ordinance. A lot of times people will hire a fence contractor, an installer, and they don't realize that the structural side has to face in and not to your neighbor.
Okay.
Yeah, so as they say, the pretty side has to face outward, not the other way around.
Gotcha.
And we get a lot of people that will call and they don't get the fence permit and they begin construction with the other side facing out and they say, well, I wanted the pretty side facing in. They don't know
so that. So they have to redo that part, yes?
Yes, and we try to catch it before work begins and make sure they get a permit.
Yeah.
Again, it's to help people rather than cause any kind of issues. So we always say call, get a permit first.
Sure.
Driveway permits, we issue those because driveways do have to be paved in the city.
Gotcha. Concrete
or asphalt. And that's actually to ensure essentially common characteristics throughout, say, subdivisions.
Okay. Gotcha.
If the subdivision has all concrete or asphalt driveways, we don't want someone putting in a gravel driveway next to it.
Gotcha.
Because it could devalue property. You could get rocks thrown out on the road. Sometimes we have to have pipes put under driveways if we have a ditch running along the road.
Sure.
So that's another thing that we issue permits on. Encroachment permits, as I discussed a lot of times with utility work and right-of-ways. Sign permits, we look at the types of signs, the heights of signs, locations, things of that nature. Home occupation permits, we try to look at context within neighborhood compatibility, parking, making sure there's no impacts on neighboring properties where people are living. Business licenses, the main purpose, tax revenue.
Sure.
And in terms of some of the costs, as I discussed, the building permits, you're looking at no cost, under $4,000. Every $5,000 up from there, it's $25 per $5,000 up to $90,000. Fence permits, driveway permits, encroachment permits, and home occupation permits, there's no cost. So I know people will be happy to hear that.
Yes.
A lot of these permits don't even have a cost, or if it is, it's a small fee.
Yeah, it's nominal.
Sign permits, $25 for the first sign, $5 each additional, which is also very reasonable. Tent permits are $125. And as I discussed, business licenses, they're only $25 to start out, just to apply for the license. So that was really a quick overview of really everything that for the most part, that we look at.
People can contact you. We got about a minute left. So his cell phone number is
1-800
BR4. Contact you or your office, and where's it located?
We're located at 411 West Lincoln Trail Boulevard in Radcliffe, right at City Hall. We're at the corner of West Lincoln Trail Boulevard and Freedom's Way. So you can come into City Hall, you can come right in and see us, or you can call us.
Or they can meet you at Anderson Pool for some laps in the morning, can't they?
Yep, they can meet me bright and early.
Well, excellent. We got about 1 minute, and I do appreciate you chatting with us today and giving us an update. And Radcliffe is, they're rocking and rolling, aren't they?
Yeah, things are really moving forward.
They're rocking and rolling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's great seeing you again, George, and always good to see you.
Yeah, good to chat with my Canadian friends again. Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And we got Professor Ron Hartley back there on audio and video, and he's our writer and choreographer and, editor and producer, right, Ron? Yeah, he's back there. We appreciate that. Yeah, thumbs up. And appreciate it much, Murray. Thank you for Issues and Insights. I'm George Pennington. We'll see you next time. Later.